More trouble for the Telangana government in the Kancha Gachibowli land controversy. The apex court today made some sharp observations on the case and told the Revanth Reddy government that it will have to come up with a specific plan to restore the 100 acres of land alongside the University of Hyderabad on which the state had carried out tree felling. The court even asked if the state wanted its officers to go to temporary prison to emphasize its seriousness on the case and asked the government to submit the plan if it wants its chief secretary, quote-unquote, to be saved from severe action. The state argued that its actions were bona fide but conceded that there may have been errors. The question really is, has this issue put the Revanth Reddy government in a tight spot? Multiple other questions being raised over the way the clearing of the land was carried out.
Will submit within 4 weeks with facts and true information of the lands in the ground reality. Some of the people or parties misleading and confused the Sadhikarika committee, and also government observations are different in this land regards. So this is interim observation of the Supreme Court.
Well, so what's the fallout of the case on the government and the ecological fallout of the state's actions, if any? Joining me this evening, my colleague Uma Sudhir, who's been tracking this case very closely, social activist from Hyderabad, Uday Krishna Peddi Reddy, and pro-Congress political analyst Syed Asad Abbas. My first question to you, Uma, put this in perspective in terms of the developments today and the observations from the apex court, both in terms of the fallout for the government politically in terms of the issue, and also from the ecological standpoint of the area which you have visited repeatedly over the last few weeks.
So certainly another setback to the state government as far as Kancha Gachibowli area is concerned, with the Supreme Court this time quoting from the Central Empowered Committee, which had been sent by the apex court to come here and take a ground report, actually meet with all the stakeholders and then present its report to the Supreme Court, where the Central Empowered Committee's reports itself, the Supreme Court said, was quite disturbing on many counts. And they have in fact now said, the Central Empowered Committee had told them that this is seeming like forest-like land. Of course, the final report on that will be given after the Forest Survey of India presents its report with all the technicalities about what defines a forest. But the Supreme Court very scathingly once again talking about the 1996 order and why the state government had not, had not followed it, and what explains the felling of the trees and whether consent had been taken for all the species. You would recall, or let me just point attention to the fact that there is, there are some exempt trees and there are non-exempt species in the tree felling itself. But politically, there are 2 or 3 things that I must point out. While the Supreme Court spoke about sending officials to temporary prison, it spoke about not just the Chief Secretary, who happens to be retiring this month, but also spoke about the TGIIC and said that those officials will also be named in the Central Empowerment Committee report that is to be submitted in 4 weeks, which means it is in many senses the indictment of the government itself. If officials in different sectors of the government are going to be blamed for what happened at Kancha Gachibowli, obviously the moral responsibility, the overall responsibility for this would lie with the government itself. And therefore, I think this is certainly politically a setback at a time when you recall, Veera, that the Prime Minister has also spoken on this issue and said that forests are being cut here in Telangana.
Right. Syed Asad Abbas, Uma just putting in a nutshell the whole issue. It is something where the Revanth Reddy government in Telangana seems to have hurried the matter. The way it went about the process has now put it in a back foot. A clear embarrassment, you would concede?
Definitely not look at it as an embarrassment, Veera Sahab. The fact of the matter, Revanth Reddy ji, last year, when May 2024, the land order came in the verdict in the favor of Telangana government with respect to the same land. The same land was previously fought tooth and nail by the BRS government for several years. Nevertheless, what is the intent here? The intent of Revanth Reddy Garu, of the government, has been for better Telangana, better Hyderabad, better business park, tech park, so on and so forth, which could facilitate a great economic reforms there. But let us understand, Supreme Court is supreme but not infallible, as said earlier. I have questions to be asked. As a citizen of this country, my fundamental rights allows me to dissent with the verdict. The fact is, let me bring to your notice, in many of the cases, the
Okay.
Supreme Court has not raised an alarm the way it did
Right.
with Kancha Gachibowli. Just one instance. Development projects in Great Nicobar Island are taking place where there is
Mr.
deforestation. Large scale deforestation in Chhattisgarh. Felling of 17,000 trees in
Right.
UP for Kawad Yatra. Felling of trees in UP's Mirzapur for thermal power plant. Dry forests of Aravalis cleared for mining and construction. Forest linked to India's only ape sanctuary to give way for oil drilling. And last one, at least 11,000 trees to be cut for Pune riverfront development project. The fact is, politics has been done on this, and the Bharatiya Janata
Okay.
Party, where it does the same in their states, in their ruling states, no question on that front. This is
All right.
hypocrisy, I would say.
You are saying it's hypocrisy. Mr. Pedi Reddy, is the Telangana government being singled out in this case, which as Saeed Asad Abbas is arguing, is a nationwide issue?
I would not want to talk about the other projects happening in other areas, but I would like to stick to Kancha Gachibowli, where in any layout, if you take a layout on the larger sense, there is always a space allotted for greenery. In a city also, there needs to be space for greenery. We have never questioned the ownership of the land, nor are we arguing on the ownership of the land or what happened in the past 20 years. As per the Supreme Court orders, this land should have been declared as the deemed forest, in which sense it would have been a lung space for that area of the city. Gachibowli does not have any lung space, and development has been happening from last 30 years, 35 years. But then at the same time, we've been losing greenery also all these 30, 35 years. So some way we have to stop this. Where do we stop it? And the other argument, like it's happening elsewhere, so we should also do it here. I don't think that's a good way to look at it. We have to set our home right first and then look around. So we, citizens of Hyderabad, do look at that space in Gachibowli as a deemed forest where there are animals, there is an ecosystem, rock formations, lakes. Lakes are actually polluted as per the CEC report also. So this area really needs to be preserved. It has to be conserved and brought back to what it was earlier, which is going to be a lung space for the city forever.
Okay, you're making an important point. Before I get Saeed Asad Abbas, very quickly, Mr. Pedi Reddy, what would be your biggest concern in undoing perhaps what's already happened in those 100 acres?
See, most of the greenery can be brought back. The loss of animals is not accounted for because the government is not even acknowledging that there's any animals there. And the rock formations, there were quite a lot of small rock formations which have all been destroyed. So we have in our request to the CEC when they came here visiting, we gave a representation also. Basically, we want the land to be restored, but immediate steps is what we were looking at. Fencing of the area so the animals don't go out into the neighboring communities. Creating a small water bodies for them because the lakes are quite polluted at this point. Since all the trees have been removed, we wanted them to come up with some temporary shelters so the animals have some kind of a protection from the sun. We are in summer already.
Okay, you made important points there. Saeed Asad Abbas, coming back to that political point which Mr. Pedi Reddy doesn't want to get involved with, but the fact is that if something's happening wrong somewhere else, it may not be justified to use that as an argument for what happened in Gachibowli. I give you 30 seconds to give your response and then I'll get the final word from Uma.
Reddy Garu reminds me of this beautiful George Orwellian saying, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than the others. Respected sir, this is absolutely hypocritical and this is very selective. If something in the Hyderabad is happening, you'll speak only there, not about the rest of the country.
No, but
well,
aren't
great that you care for
you
Hyderabad,
focusing?
but
No,
sir,
Side,
you should care for the other parts
hang
of
on.
the country too.
Let's focus on what has happened in Hyderabad at the moment in question. Mr. Pedi Reddy is not saying anything about any other place. He's saying this is the issue in focus. So let's focus on that. 30 seconds.
But
somewhere the government needs to concede.
Firstly, that is very selective. Where I look at it is, if what's happening at Hyderabad is wrong, I'll stand with you there and say the other parts are also wrong. But the selective outrage has been fueled by the political parties, especially the Bharatiya Janata Party and the BRS. I'll tell you why. Many of fronts, there have been tweets which have been deleted carrying AI-generated images of the same. Where Reddy Garu's government did take action, there is false news, false fake videos which are being spread, which is wrong. I stand with the students who protested. But playing politics over this selective
All
outrage
right.
is absolutely wrong. That's my point.
Absolute point taken. Uma Sudhir, more politics, less about actual substance is the conversation. That's what Saeed Asad Abbas is saying.
So, okay, there was AI generated images that were used by certain people, but that is not really depicting the truth. And we have been on the ground, and somebody like Uday Krishna has also spoken about the kind of biodiversity that exists there. And we are all very well aware that we need green lugs, not just in an urban area, but we need forest cover as well. And therefore, I would concede to Asad Abbas's point about the issues that he has raised, the multiple locations that he has spoken about. When the Supreme Court today declared that they can go to any extent and, in fact, protect the environment and ecology, I would actually think someone should go to court naming, why not the Congress itself, go to court naming all these different locations that he's talking about across the country. And the Supreme Court can make this a larger issue of why we in the country, as citizens of the earth, in fact, need to protect all these different green areas. Politics, yes, does push protests forward and therefore brings up the agenda. But I think this is an opportunity for all of us in that sense to be able to protect the forest cover, green cover elsewhere, because all the different locations that Mr. Abbas pointed out is also something that the Apex Court can take cognizance of.
Right, important point that you make there, Uma Sudhir. Thanks very much to all three of you for joining me here on the Southern View this evening.